Hello, this is Myers Dupuy with Scratch Advisors, and you are listening to the first in a new YouTube series where we are going to start exploring the value creation that happens when you combine really deep alignment consulting with no-code software. This first episode, I've got my business partner and co-host and good friend, Randy Murphy, joining. And this first episode, we're just going to kind of lay down the basic concepts of what's happening here. Like, what is this value creation that we are seeing in our client businesses? We're going to talk through some of the themes that are recurring that are really interesting and kind of groundbreaking. And then just set the expectations for how this series is going to go. Welcome, Randy.
Yeah, thanks, Myers. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
So let's just briefly share our backgrounds, kind of what perspectives we're going to bring to these conversations. I'll start first. I've got 30 years in kind of startup industry, zero to exit, with a focus on operations, product, culture, alignment. So my primary roles have been like chief operations officer, chief product officer, sometimes CEO, but usually second to the CEO. So Randy, quick intro on your background.
Yeah, a little more than 30 years in mostly entrepreneurial roles, SMBs, everything from CEO, a lot of sales background, a lot of go-to-market, DevOps, RevOps. Technology was where I got started. So some turnaround, the main theme through all of that was business process management.
Yeah, so we will be bringing those two different perspectives together to tell some great stories. And this, so let's actually talk about what format is this show going to take. You're going to see alternating shows between long form episodes where we bring in CEOs and other C-suite operators who have been our clients, where we've solved real problems together with them. We'll bring them on, interview them. They'll tell their stories about, kind of what problems they were trying to solve, what big strategic objectives they were trying to make happen in their business, and then how we came together and used no-code software to accelerate that problem solving to unlock new value for them. So that's kind of one type of episode, the long form. And then in between those, we're going to do shorter segments where we dive into actual best practices for those who are building in a no-code platform. Notion is going to be the no-code platform we're going to focus on the most. And so, those who are actually building will be able to get some best practices and some practical applications. Who is this for? This series is going to be for, it's ideally suited for C-suite operators, CEO, COO, chief technology officer, chief people officer, that group of C-suite who are trying to scale their business. So you could be in seed or round A of fundraising, and you're trying to get to the next level. We are working with businesses between 5 million and 50 million, between 10 people and 200 people, and seeing a recurring pattern of a set of problems that we're going to be diving into with our clients. And so you're going to actually hear from real people that are where we're solving these problems together.
Yeah, and I'd add a big theme of private equity backed as well, not just owner operators, private owners, but private equity portfolio situations.
Yeah, the private equity backing really accelerates the need for scale. There's some very real expectations and a very quick runway that's expected, and so it kind of focuses the mind to want to solve these problems. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about some of the themes that are going to be recurring in this series. And let me say at the beginning of that we are seeing, I would say the primary problem that we are seeing in these businesses we're working with is that the CEO has a vision, and there's usually strategic objectives connected to that vision, whether they've been defined and articulated is a different matter, but they exist in somebody's head. And the disconnect between that vision and those objectives and the operational reality on the ground is significant. Like the disconnect is significant. And one of the
Yeah.
key drivers of that disconnect is the fact that SaaS software has become so ubiquitous and so freemium, like that business model of freemium, which really means that anybody, you don't necessarily even need a credit card to onboard a new tool. And so we've pulled away the decision making from, the accumulation of the tech stack. We've pulled that decision away from the CIO. Like back in the day, Randy, when it used to cost $50,000 or $150,000 to onboard a series piece of software, the CEO was like, "Hey, slow down. What is this tool? How does it fit into the ecosystem? What puzzle piece does it fit into?" That's gone away. And so now you've got departments, team leaders, individual contributors essentially expressing their own preference of like, well, I like Monday. I like Trello. I like Teams chat, and on and on and on and on. And so people are really optimizing their individual productivity vis-a-vis their own preferred SaaS collaboration tool. But then that full set of tools never gets aligned or orchestrated. And then they end up using what, 5-10% of these tools that they're paying 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If that.
So that's one of the core problems we're seeing is the fragmentation of communication, business intelligence, and essentially like cross-departmental alignment because of this over optimization of my personal productivity through my preferred SaaS tool at the expense of, hey, how do we actually all need to operate together as a group of people to achieve these objectives inside of this, CEO mission? So, any thoughts on that, Randy?
No, I think that of all the issues that we try to solve, that is probably the biggest underlying value suck for any company, right? I mean, it literally crosses people. You can't have cross functional or interdepartmental processes running smoothly with that type of approach. And what's crazy, I don't think people have seen it coming. It's just now here. So yeah, I that's a real interesting dilemma that we see across every company.
Of course, the COVID, the migration to remote work during and after COVID has just supercharged that.
Really, yeah.
So okay, so inside of that big problem context, here we're just going to name a couple of core themes that are going to show up in this series of shows. So this is going to sound super obvious, but it actually gets ignored in a really fundamental way. So number one is that businesses are in fact unique, and that uniqueness is exactly what makes that business valuable to its customers and differentiates it in the market. Again, as I hear myself saying that out loud, that sounds like stupidly obvious, but the problem is with that the SaaS business model depends upon commoditizing that uniqueness into some set of features that can be mass applied to as many businesses as possible, right?
Yeah, it needs uniformity.
And so one of the themes that has been, or one of the kind of bright spots of value creation that we have been seeing through our consulting and no code build outs with our customers is something magical happens when you do enough alignment consulting with a group of people for them to really agree on and express their uniqueness, whether it's a message, whether it's sort of a process or their IP, and then only build the amount of no code software that's necessary to express that uniqueness, And so the workers in the business actually see what they kind of have fallen in love with about their business in the software itself, right? Like, think about how many times we've used SaaS software and you just kind of roll your eyes at it. It's like, I hate this tool. I don't want to use it, but I have to use it.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that we're
Yeah.
discovering is that it feels really good emotionally, psychologically, to see your business expressed in no code software that sort of takes away that frustration. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah, the customization is capable. And I'd even throw in that some of these big SaaS applications almost require other applications to really get to true productivity if you're not in a no-code environment. Let's, as we go through this part, because there's a lot of people out there that probably don't know what no-code means, to the point where, okay, well, so what? There's no software. So let's actually talk about the definition of what it means, but then let's get some practical examples around it. And I also want to hit, we're not coming in every time and saying throw away every SaaS product, right? We're basically saying keep some anchor things that make a lot of sense, and then we're kind of, no code is really the people, process, and IP between all functions, all process, all activities between those anchor applications, right? So maybe we start with kind of what is no code for newbies, and then let's get into some examples.
So I have a walking around definition that I think I mean with it, and that is that a no code platform basically creates Lego blocks out of the outputs that a development team would otherwise build. So if you put 5 developers in a room and you gave them a bunch of requirements, and they had not written a line of code yet, and then 6 months later you have a product, like a software product, out of that room, what are the components inside of that software product? Databases, relational databases, arrays, classes, dashboards, workflows, right? Like, these are all things. And so a no-code platform is a SaaS tool. Like, it you interact with it in a SaaS environment, right? Because it's in the cloud, but it is a SaaS tool that builds tools.
Well, I think that's a good way to express that, without a doubt. Yeah, because it can be used for anything, right? It's not industry agnostic. It is industry agnostic. Yeah, so I think that's fair. But maybe let's talk about who can use it. I mean, I now know a lot about no code, mostly because of you and what you did when you helped me with the company that I started. But now I use no code, right? I used to be a developer. I haven't developed in 10 or 15 years. So who is typically the person who could be using a no code environment, and what kind of training does it take, and how dangerous can you be?
Yeah. So
quickly,
if it's done well, the answer is anybody. Like, my 13-year-old son built a Pokemon database that allows him to group his Pokemon cards by type, fire, water, etc. Right? He has different views of his Pokemon cards because he built a no-code database in Notion. I mean, I may have had something to do with that, but he was yeah, he was organizing and reorganizing his Pokemon cards, wanting to know what he had, and in order for him to go find one card, he would spend 3 hours on a Saturday kind of getting them all out again and reorganizing them again. So I just introduced this idea to him to say, hey, you could build a database, and this is what it would allow you to do. And so he did it, like, with very little help for me. So when no code is done elegantly and well, the whole point is that anybody can do it. So maybe it'd be worth mentioning a couple of tools in the world of no code. The one that we're going to talk the most about, almost exclusively about, in our client interviews and in our best practice segments, is Notion. I've been interacting with no code for the past 5 years. Notion is hands down my favorite, because it's the most flexible. There are other no code solutions. Like, I actually chat GPT'd list the top 5 no code solutions. I don't have them up at the moment, but Bubble.
This is probably a good time to announce that this podcast is brought to you by
It's not.
Notion. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Not at all. But that's an important thing. Like, we have no connection to them. It just happens to be the best product for us to deliver solutions, right?
So Bubble is another one. So you can ChatGPT.
Asana.
I don't think Asana is no code. Asana is a project management platform, and so
you're right. Yeah, they're missing some of the stuff that no code.
But I'm also not an Asana expert, so apologies to Asana evangelists out there. Maybe it is. And again, this is part of the point of this series is for us to learn, from other people. So we don't show up here thinking we've got all the best right answers, but what we do have is real world evidence from real companies that we've solved real problems with. Like that's why we're doing this, is that you and I've been building businesses zero to exit from our different functional role points of view. And this is the most value creation and the most excitement that I've seen in my career. And I just want to tell these stories, Theme number 2 is the false promise of SaaS. It's tangential to what we just said, but we've heard there's a lot of media coverage of the fact that large enterprises are starting to shed SaaS tools. Klarna is one that we've talked about, seen in the news. In our clients, what we're seeing is that the value return of here's a point SaaS solution that I'm going to drop on top of this department has just sort of run aground because like we said, there are too many of the tools, too few features, like 5-10% of them are being used. And so there's this depreciating return where people keep layering another tool and another tool and another tool. And it really ends up kind of holding your business hostage from getting aligned. So that freemium business model of the next shiny SaaS tool has, I'm not saying it's dead or gone forever. There's definitely still a place for it, but it is not the sole answer for unlocking business value.
Well, and I'd even throw on top of that, it's the thing that keeps certainly CEOs and CFOs up at night. It's we're spending what on these anchor and non-anchor SaaS tools? No, we know we don't use all of them. We know that there's common features across many of them, and the thought of getting another anchor SaaS product in kind of gets at least the finance people sick at their stomach, right? There's like, we don't have this somewhere already in our stack, but people don't know, right?
Okay, theme number 3. Software doesn't solve your problem. It just, like, you have to have alignment before the software can help you. And when you buy pre-built software for you, that software vendor has tried their best to decide how your business should operate. And so we all kind of have this agency problem with software where we think, oh, I need a new tool. That tool will fix this mess or fix this lack of alignment or whatever. And what we are seeing when we go into our clients that we consult with is that the wrong thing to do, but that the first thing people want to do is, well, just build me, let's go get a template out of the no code space. Right. So we work with Notion as one of our favorite no code platforms. We're going to talk a lot about Notion in this series. Notion has a lot of templates, but we do not start with templates because that sort of just recreates the same SaaS point solution problem, which is we're taking agency away from that team to think through how they need to operate. And instead we're supplanting that, deep orchestration and alignment with some other human in the world has no knowledge of your business saying, I think you should operate like this. And let's just save a little bit of time. And you get to put your cookie, this cookie cutter on top of you. So there is definitely a mindset shift that's needed here for this no code concept to work for a business, which is you are responsible for figuring out your alignment. And then it is shockingly fast how quickly we can express that new alignment in Notion in a no code platform. But it's kind of like a 20-to-1 ratio. We need to spend 20 units of time to do the interdepartmental, cross-functional marriage therapy, so that the 1 unit of time that we spend building the no code actually expresses the alignment. You cannot get to alignment by building software.
This is such an important thing, and we haven't talked about this, but I want to talk about it later in this episode, Myers, is, in a way, SaaS in the last 10, 15, 20 years with packaged software has stopped the whole point, like you said, of what are the requirements? Let's go build a solution that fits your requirements, which has been great, right? That the proliferation of software and the cost has been down. You don't have to have a team of people inside your organization or hire a team of people. But with no code, what we do is really what we used to do 30 years ago in the consulting business. Whether you were internal development for a large organization or a custom development shop, we would go get the requirements and we would actually build them. No code is basically all the same up front. Get the requirements, build the solution. It's not the months and years and 100 people and millions of dollars to actually roll out. Right. So it's literally back to the requirements first, not trying to fit requirements into a pre-built SaaS platform.
That's a really good point. To me, the magic trick of no code is that we've taken away that time latency between the gathering of the requirements and the building of the software. Because in the old days,
exactly.
In the old days, you had to go deliver the requirements to the engineers. I'm thinking now of Office Space, of like, what would you say you do here? Do you physically take? So you physically take the requirement? Well, no, my fax does that. Anyway, but in the no code world, specifically in the Notion platform, we are having conversations with customers and saying, what's your goal? How do you operate? How do you solve the stakeholders around you? What is that, like true business alignment? That's the requirements gathering. And in the same meeting, like literally in the same meeting, we are building that software and saying, does it look like this? Do you like this? And it's what's fascinating is, I said kind of a 20-to-1 ratio of the amount of time to consult versus the amount of time to build. But what gets really cool is when you can display and show what that, like, structure and express that alignment in the no code, the act of getting aligned accelerates because people can see like, oh no, that's not what I meant. We do it this way. But like once people start seeing it in a workflow, in a database, they can now project like, oh, that's what it would look like. Oh, that's what the statuses would be. And so
the series hit a dopamine along that with it as well.
That's actually
right?
a really good point, because when people hear the phrase like process alignment, even I just kind of go, ugh, it just doesn't sound fun and it doesn't sound exciting. But when you see it, like, when they say something aligned and then 90 seconds later see it in what they're used to seeing as essentially SaaS software, but it's this, no code build out, they want more. They're like, oh, cool. Let's keep going. Let's get this finished, Okay. Then the last theme, and I'm sure there are going to be more themes that come up, but these are just the 4 that we like clearly could brainstorm in advance. So I'm just going to say one more core theme. And that is this, that you only, like in the no code space, in Notion, we only build what you need. We have become so habituated to being the recipient of feature wars between SaaS companies. Like the way to differentiate yourself in the SaaS marketplace is to have more and more and cooler features. And so product managers, and I've been one many times.
Well, and then obviously they want that revenue increase as well, right?
Yeah. So more modules, more optional modules, more users in those modules. But what it results in is, as a consumer, I get a product with 200 features in it, and every single one of those features has a rational explanation, right? A product manager can be like, oh, well, we did some user research, and so this feature does this, and people need it, and so forth. But the reality is that, as we've said, people only use 5-10% of the products that they're buying. And those other 90% of the features, they don't have time to understand them. They don't have time to onboard them. And they really are serving the purpose of helping that SaaS company differentiate itself from its competitors, which is, valuable in the sales process. But the reality as the user is, yeah, I actually really only need these 5 or 10 things. It's kind of funny. It's like how cable TV got, where you had to buy a package of 70 channels,
Yeah.
Um,
That's actually a really good analogy, because it's and what you feel about that. Remember 10 years ago, before streaming, you every person with cable would say, yeah, I watched 3 channels and I spend $300 a month.
Maybe there's some sort of economics principle behind there, is that as an industry starts to get kind of over its ski tips, that it starts to have these really like sort of unhealthy, irrational business models that it has to do. They become bloated, Okay, so just to summarize, this last theme is, in the no-code space, you get to build only what you need. And that's super refreshing.
Yeah. Well, and I think that is a perfect segment. Please tell the story of the CEO who has the tax company, who literally, working with you for a period of time, and he is so invested in. But tell the story of where he was, where he is today, and literally what he said, not only about your specific consulting help, but about the operating system that you helped him build, that he is now taking even further. I think that's probably the most crystal clear example that can be applicable for our audience.
Sure. So we're actually going to have the CEO on the next episode. So we're going to do a deep dive. So I'll just give you, a quick summary. So this is a tax protesting SaaS platform. So if you're a residential homeowner, you put your address into this tool, and then it sort of automates the process of protesting your home taxes for you. And then you pay for a percentage of the savings they make for you. So that's the basic value prop of that business. And the CEO had really turned it around. It was about to fail, and he was a turnaround CEO, and he did a great job. And we're going to tell that story next week. But the problem was that the business wasn't scalable, that the processes were manual. They were done by email and spreadsheet, and largely Teams chat. And so as he started thinking about the future strategic acquisition potential of his business, he knew that it would be very difficult to tell a scalable story if they came in and did due diligence and saw that, in order to operate this whole thing, you really need these 3 people, and they need to keep doing their spreadsheet, email, daily dance in order to make it all work. And so we went in there. Yeah.
That's incredible, but I'm sure pretty common,
it's very
right?
common.
I mean,
and so we went into his business, kind of like when you go into an attic and you start pulling stuff out of boxes. Like, we literally just like when you grab that box and it's the Christmas lights from 3 years ago, and it's like this big ball of Christmas lights, and you think, oh God, I don't want to untangle that thing. But these are the kind of accumulations of dysfunction in a business, is the boxes of Christmas lights, and only this one person knows how it all fits together. So we pulled all that stuff out, untangled it, re-put it back together in no code. We built a strategic objectives solution where everybody in the company could see what are our annual strategic objectives. We connected those strategic objectives to initiatives and tasks, so that anybody in the company could see, well, who's working on this objective, and what bets are they making to try to achieve that objective in the next quarter. I mean, this is classic scaling up
Yeah.
EOS kind of framework. And in fact, the CEO had got, he's a fan of scaling up. And so he took some of the concepts that he had learned from scaling up. We infused that in there. And within literally a few hours, like 2.5, 3 hours of he and I just collaborating together in no code, he had a completely implemented, this is not an official term, but a scaling up solution, right? Like this is not in partnership with Scaling Up.
Yeah.
We haven't talked to them, but he's read the book. He's been to a couple of Scaling Up classes, and he's like, okay, for everything I care about from that program, we structured it and built him essentially a custom Scaling Up solution for his business in about 3 hours, and now the entire company can see what's going on. So that was one of about a dozen solutions we built for him. And
name off some of those others. I mean, we don't have to go into full detail, but like, what are the functional areas?
Product lifecycle. So they were managing product by he as the CEO sending emails to the engineers where that email was essentially a new product idea. And the thread of that email that would accumulate back and forth was the requirements document.
Hey, so efficient.
And one of the things that he needed to be able to demonstrate to his investors is that they're hitting the point where they've really matured their product significantly to the point where they don't need to do a huge, a lot more investment in product build out, but he couldn't tell that story. And so we structured all of his products and modules as kind of core databases in Notion, like kind of like components, like you might think about in Jira. And then he built out all of the features that had been completed. And so we were able to give a burn down percentage completion of all of the strategic roadmap items that he had ever discussed with the board, so that in his next board meeting, he could visualize, hey guys, we're 85% complete with our product investment. Yeah. Wow. And now, of course, the developers, instead of getting their requirements from email, they have dashboards where it's like, this feature is in requirements gathering. This feature is in design, UX design, and now it's ready. Now it's dev ready, right? So they've got a Kanban board. So we're basically reproducing product lifecycle in Jira.
A whole nother SaaS product you've just reproduced, and it's in the context of all their employees, in the context of process. You can actually project manage with it. So you put in basically ELT ops, you put in strategic objectives all the way down to the doers of the company. You've put in a product life cycle. I'm thinking probably there's got to be a sales and marketing component at least, right? And I'm sure more, but
their marketing so they are a B2C company, so they're running social media campaigns. They're sending out emails all the time, and that process was pretty rough, pretty painful. And so we built databases and dashboards for social media campaigns, for email campaigns, and now they have all that visualized. There's kind of a clear workflow process of, when does the marketing person draft it? And then the moment it's drafted, it sends an automated notice to the CEO like, hey, we're ready for your approval on this. So so all of that marketing process, one of marketing's frustrations is that they build all these great digital assets and they were everywhere. They were on the CMO's hard drive. They were in Google Drive. They were in Dropbox. They were in like 5 different cloud repositories, which meant that if anybody wanted a digital asset, they had to go to the CMO through Teams chat or email and say, hey, where's that one image? And so she was spending a significant amount of her time just responding to requests for a PDF or a JPEG or something. And so we built a digital assets library. Yeah.
And real quick, we got to digress for 1 second, then we'll get back to the pro-tax company or protest tax company. So there's a book that we've read that we both like, Come Up for Air, which talks about many things about productivity. And there's a great quote in there, and I'm going to get this wrong, but it's something along the lines of companies that succeed going forward are going to be the ones that can digest information quickly. So not only like finding it quickly is the standard, right? Not just finding it, but being able to digest and apply very quickly. And I see what you are describing of what you built for this CEO's company is very much like that, right? You've been able to put their people, process, IP, content, literally down to JPEGs and former social media campaigns at their fingertips. I know in a no-code environment, you literally can search all of that. It's attached to AI as well, right? So huge productivity advances in an environment of no-code. But sorry, go talk more about some of the modules.
So the concept that you are referring to from Nick Sonnenberg's book, Come Up for Air, is you want to turn your company into a pull company versus a push company. And what pulling means,
self-service.
What pulling means is when I am a worker trying to get my part of a process done, I want to be able to pull the context I need around what status is the project in, what was the last condition or context it was in, so that I can do my job. So it's a self-service, transparent workflow in which I can pull what I need when I need it in an asynchronous model. That's what you want. What most people have is a push model where, because things are not aligned in reality, and they're also therefore not aligned digitally, in order for me to get that digital asset, or for me to know when to contribute to a complex workflow, everything has to be put, like, Slack messages, team chat messages. I have to push at people, give me this, I need this. And then they're pushing that back at me. And so our days become this really unpleasant experience of reacting to pushed messages. And every single one of those messages now gives me a job I have to do, which is to reconstruct the context of where that piece of information in that pushed message belongs in the grand scheme of things, right? And so this gets back to this, like, maybe we need to add this as a theme. We need to add this as a core theme. The SaaS multiverse, okay, the SaaS universe has trained workers to optimize, to maximize their personal productivity over the company's productivity. Like, the most productive thing for me to do from an individual efficiency standpoint is to push a message at you. Hey, Randy, what's the status of this? Hey, Randy, give me this document. It takes me no time. It's super fast, but it's super not fast and super inefficient for you to be processing all those messages all day long. And by the way, I'm the recipient of push messages too, right? So we're like, it's very short-sighted. And so what the company culture has to wrap its brain around, and this really comes from leadership, and this is kind of a core part of our consulting practice, is that we all have to agree that sometimes I need to allow myself to be slightly individually less productive. In other words, I need to go to the right workflow and update the right part of the workflow so that the other 10 stakeholders know exactly what's going on. That's slightly less productive for me in that moment, but the collective impact of that is maximum organizational productivity.
It's direct correlation to the old, the fable, give somebody a fish, they eat for a day, teach them how to fish, they eat forever. It literally is the latter here, right? I mean, it's being able for everyone to have good productivity versus what Nick would say. Nick Sonnenberg from Come Up from Air, he quoted, I think, a Gartner quote of 50% of payroll is non-productive. It's wasted. And can you imagine what we could do by getting back even a small percentage of that 50% waste, right? But you have to buy in. You have to be a part of teaching everyone how to fish.
The phrase he talks about, so it was a Gallup poll, and he said that Yeah, he calls it the great scavenger hunt, the great daily scavenger hunt, right? Where you're like spelunking through email threads and trying to search through Slack. Where was that one message that's the key for me to know what's going on? It's so insidious and pervasive. So, okay. I come from a technology background, right? Like for 25 years, I was in software businesses, zero to exit. And so my natural first set of clients when we started doing this consulting were those businesses. I had, friends who had become leaders in those businesses. So like, that's where my first business came from. And so as I started doing consulting combined with no code, it was very clear to me that this made all the sense in the world for a technology business. And then I started just through social connections, built a friendship with the CEO of a winery in Texas. So it's good.
That's a good friend to have.
Really good wine, actually. Anyway, so just as friends, we were hanging out over a couple of year period, having dinner once a quarter, more or less. And I was just asking him questions about how his winery operations, winery growth was going. And I don't know if they still are, but at the time they were the fastest growing winery in the state of Texas, in terms of like volume of wine, staff growth, wine brands growth. And he kept trying to tell a really optimistic story because there's some awesomeness in all that growth, but I could just hear behind those stories that how painful it was operationally for him to try to run that business. Because even though they're manufacturing wine, they're all of it has to be done through, alignment inside of a computer space. Ultimately, like, who's working on this wine and what's the marketing of it and how are we going to get this label printed and all of the operational dependencies to run that business. It became very clear to me that he was suffering from the same problems as the tech companies were suffering from. And so we just decided to kind of do an experiment to see if this thing that this deep alignment consulting combined with Notion custom workspace would help him. And we built, so he, at the end of this engagement, he came to me and said, okay, so what you've done for us is you built us what I call Winery OS, Winery Operating System. And by the way, this is essentially the inspiration for why we call what we do Scratch OS. Our consulting practice is called Scratch Advisors. And so when we build you a custom Notion workspace, we call it Scratch OS. But this CEO saying that we built him Winery OS was kind of the inspiration for it. Okay, so look, we built out a full consumer packaged good CPG manufacturing workflow. That's like the act of making wine. It requires scheduling. There's 100 to 150 meta properties that describe that wine, the percent of the alcohol, the vineyard, the percentage of grapes, all that stuff. Sure, it happens physically in the real world, but it has to be captured digitally because the rest of the company needs to consume it. Marketing needs to consume it. Legal needs to consume it. And so they were, oh my gosh, they were managing all this through a spreadsheet. And for those who are sort of operation minded, you're going to understand how painful this would have been. The spreadsheet was tabs, and every tab was a different phase of the workflow of the manufacturing process. But so they would have to cut and paste a winery record, a wine bottle record from one tab to the next, but the columns didn't match up. So every time they copy and pasted a wine across the spreadsheet, they were losing data. And so the way they would accommodate that is to go in and put comments around the broken cell and say, well, what should really be here is this. So you had to read all the comments on every record to know what.
This is not a small. This is what, like a $20 to $30 million
exactly right.
company.
So we disentangled all of that, rebuilt it from the ground up, and my big concern was going to be, will the winemakers adopt this? Because the winemakers chose to make wine for a reason. They like working with.
And these are the guys out in the field with dirt in their boots and their hands.
The last thing they want to do is interact with the computer. But they were guaranteeing more computer interaction by not having this process built, because every stakeholder downstream had to email them, had to Teams chat them, had to blow up their cell phone to say, we've got to get this wine bottle on the stores of the shelves of HEB. I need to know this critical information. And by the time they were getting blown up in that sort of downstream phase of the manufacturing process, they've already moved on in their heads to the next, vintage of wine they're building. So they don't want to stop and think about something they built 5 months ago. Yeah, that's right.
Artists,
I'm an artiste. I cannot work in these conditions. And so what we were able to demonstrate together, and I'm thinking specifically now of like the head winemaker, the head of wine production, he and I partnered together, is that we were able to tell them, if you will simply update your wine manufacturing cycle as it's happening, nobody will ever bother you again. Because the marketing team, the label team, the finance team, they all had access to that data whenever they needed it because the winemaker did it one time. Oh, so here's another theme. Here's another theme that we're going to hit on is the ROI of a keystroke. When I wake up in the morning and my feet hit the ground and I'm doing, consulting combined with no code, a way to measure the efficacy of my day is, have I helped a client get higher ROI on one single keystroke? Right? Like the winemaker entering those details, 10 stakeholders would have otherwise interrupted them for that. So the cost, that's negative ROI, versus
and you're not even talking about the frustration part, the economic of it. You're just talking about financial, right? Yeah.
Okay, so and again, this is one of the reasons why Notion has proven itself to me as such a reliable tool, is because I truly did not know if I was going to be able to solve these problems for this winery. Like, the CEO and I both kind of took an experiment together and let's just see. And we've built a fully functional organizational wide winery operating system, that if we chose to verticalize that and go after wineries, we could sell that. Now, I want to be very clear.
Yeah.
It's not SaaS software, and the value comes from the uniqueness of the next winery and the next winery.
Yeah. That's right. And the consulting up front of really understanding, like you said, here are the old ball of lights. I got to unwind it and then put it back in. Right. But there's some learning, right? I mean, when we do something, we've talked already about a winery. So literally a manufacturing CPG company, could be wine, could be frozen goods, doesn't matter. Right. We've talked about a tax company. We've done many other SaaS companies. It could be any company, right? It doesn't have to be just
here's a good example. Inside of that winery company, their primary method of driving, their primary revenue channel for new revenue is events. They are basically a sophisticated catering company inside of a winery, right? They're a winery first, they're geniuses at their winemaking, but the way they get it to market is through events, and events convert wine club memberships. Okay. Therefore,
okay. And so it's also an event company, right?
And not surprisingly, when you try to manage complex multi-vendor, multi-day events where you have very specific objectives you need to hit around converting wine club members, it's complex. And when you try to manage it in Teams chat and spreadsheets and emails, it does not work. It does not scale. It basically means that every event, somebody, and probably multiple people, are going to have to do personal heroics to take care of that, right? And that's what they were doing. So we structured an entire event system that could be transferred over to a catering company. And so here's this balance between that would save time in the next winery or the next PE-backed tech company, whatever module we're putting into the next company, we can definitely accelerate the time to value. but it's not just like a copy paste of SaaS software. It's, we're going to use this built no code module to ask to sort of interview you and do the discovery process to figure out what your uniqueness is. So instead of having to build it from the ground up, we're going to have a modular approach. It's going to accelerate your discovery, and then we're going to, update the 30 or 40% of it that's unique to you, and then there you go.
This, I've told you this before. It seems to me, you and I've been in this business as far as, professionals, C-level, building companies, exiting companies, process improvement. What we do seems very similar to like a McKinsey implementing SAP at a large company, but we do it for SMBs, and it's with much less cost, much faster productivity and delivery. And it's so much more customized to the SMB, and they can afford it, right? It's like bringing the value of an SAP, which sometimes they never get the value on, but debatable. But it literally is a custom ERP that includes all people, process, and IP delivered with your business uniqueness in mind, right? I mean,
that's a great market kind of parallel. Small and medium-sized businesses do not have access to that sort of value dream of having your own custom business operating system, which is where the combination of like a McKinsey and an SAP, working together for several years, probably in the ballpark of $10 million, are building a large cap custom ERP. That's not even been on the table for an SMB before,
Oh yeah, you can't even. No, your only option is to go buy every, SaaS cost and freemium solution and kind of knit it together and find out what you got at the end.
And
right?
So this is the no code combined with thoughtful consulting is that value unlocker for SMBs. And I kind of think it might be better in some ways because faster time to completion, 1/50th of the cost. I don't know how that math works out exactly, but it's like a tiny fraction relative to that large cap project.
Well, and one of the best proof points, and I'm going to tell everyone who's listening, you have to listen to the next series or the next episode in this series, because literally the tax CEO.
Yeah, he said that in my future efforts to raise capital and or if I sell the company, I now have a defensible story of scale that will increase the enterprise value of my business. Yeah. He's like, I will be able to sell this or raise money at a better value because of the existence of this, this custom no code workspace that we built for them in Notion. And last comment about that is that he and I had coffee recently, and we were just chatting about this. He has learned it. Like, he's kind of a hands-on CEO. And again, you don't have to be super technical, but he took the couple hours of experimentation time to learn it. And he's already replacing other SaaS tools in his business that we never even swung a stick at. So he mentioned that Pipedrive, he just turned off Pipedrive sales CRM because his sales guy was using 10% to Pipedrive, and they were paying several $1,000s a year for it. So we're going to get into that in more detail next week, but yeah, that's super cool.
That's
okay.
Awesome,
So we've mentioned, what have we said? We talked about strategic objectives, product lifecycle, marketing, departmental functions, CPG, wine manufacturing,
discrete or bespoke things like an event process. We've talked about some of that stuff.
Other examples.
What about customer health? Because that is a really interesting nugget of perspective for people listening to this. What did you, for that particular client, what happened?
I've got a private equity backed client that has high value B2B customers. Like, every B2B customer is, could be between like $500,000 to multi-million-dollar annual contracts. So the relationship to every one of those clients is critical, and you kind of need to know what's going on. And they did not have a customer success team. So when I partnered with them, when Scratch Advisors partnered with them, they were in their ramp up stage. Like they had just gotten the private equity capital, they were bringing on a C-suite team, and then that C-suite team started building out all these functional areas. So we had already built out a Notion custom workspace for this company, and they hired a VP of customer success. And they do use HubSpot for their CRM, and that is very normal, by the way. I do want to say to any CEO or CTO listening that you do not have to rip out all of your anchor applications. But if you kind of take the classic tech stack for a technology company, HubSpot on the front end, Jira on the back end, and in between is the messy middle. In between is
and maybe a financial application in there somewhere, just to close the books and stuff like that.
So in this particular company, they were using HubSpot for sales and Jira for engineering, and they had the messy middle. They had every flavor of things in between, and they don't want the whole company to be on HubSpot. That's expensive. And so really, if you think about the life cycle of those customers, those expensive B2B customers, those like high annual contract value B2B customers, they're going to have them for 5 to 7 years. And so if you're mapping the value and the management of that relationship over 5 to 7 years, like 5% of the touch points are in the sales part in HubSpot. The long tail of the touch points are not in HubSpot. Yeah. And so naturally, the new VP of customer success who came in was like, I'm going to bring in my point SaaS solution that I'm comfortable with. That's a natural thing to do, right? He'd used it. It'd been successful in other businesses. So that tool is called Gainsight. And I have nothing negative to say about Gainsight. It's a really good customer success management tool. But we are doing a different strategy inside of this company. We're trying to minimize point SaaS solutions. So he and I
And real quick, just for reference, another, like, what size company? 20, 30, 40, 50 million?
40 million ballpark. Yeah.
Okay. So this is a true SMB. This isn't a startup, but it's not an enterprise.
And so the VP of customer success and I sat down, we talked about what features mattered to him, and we rebuilt what he needed in a customer health tracking solution. And the cool part is that it's pulling from and the same core databases that flow through the entire company, right? Like this is this is kind of the secret of why no code works so well, is that you spend the time to figure out what core databases really contain your IP, like customers and products and projects and so forth. And then you build all these ancillary solutions around them. And so his team right now is doing their job of customer health updates. So, they proactively reach out to customers. They've got a recurring cadence of when they talk to the customer. Every single one of those conversations now is getting added to this Notion built customer success tracking tool. The CS employee can indicate, hey, this is like an escalation situation. So they check a box to say, this health update I'm giving you is like, it needs to be escalated up to the executive team. So they've got an executive dashboard that is a curated view of the latest health updates. So the COO, who's responsible for talking about health updates at the executive leadership team meeting every week, he no longer has to spend 2 hours. He was spending between 1 and 2 hours reading spreadsheets and interviewing the team leader to know, like, hey, what should I talk about in my ELT meeting coming up? All that's disappeared, right? This is the ROI of that keystroke. Is the employees are putting them in, everybody can see them, they update to the customer record. And we've even built like trending, like, is this customer, like if you just go to a customer record and you see like, oh, they're a net positive, promoter or whatever. Well, is that down from champion or is that up from a neutral rating? So the trajectory over time is actually even visible. So it's amazing. Like, and if he had done that in Gainsight, and again, no offense to Gainsight, but if he had done that there, he would have maximized his personal productivity at the expense of the organizational productivity.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you. So, if you can, give the audience a little bit of an understanding of how long did that take? How much did it cost? How long was training? Like, I mean, it's versus doing a gain site, you know?
The time to build is a function of like, can that department say out loud how it wants to operate? And in this particular example,
Mhm.
the creation of that department took place over about 4 months. They brought in a leader. That leader brought in some people. They had to figure out, how do we want to talk to customers?
So there was some time around like the
Yeah,
core
but
team.
that's when I talk about the 20-to-1 ratio of, let's get the reality aligned and organized, and then it's a unit of one to build in Notion. So if they could have been
Mhm.
aligned in a day, we could have built that solution in 3 hours,
Mhm.
right?
Wow. Yeah. So it's very fast. Was did they pick up additional user costs for implementation, for
No,
monthly ongoing? No, right? There's not another vendor to have a relationship with finance, with IT, with all there. It's just you just added another process in a tool there, or a tool, an environment, an operating system
that's
that they're
right.
already using,
So
pulling from databases that are
that's
already
right. So you've got
established.
your one user license cost to Notion. So you're buying basically a platform seat between, it's about 15 to 20 bucks a month, depending on the enterprise level you want. But then it's an
Got it.
endless array of tools after that you can build, and every one of those tools
Okay.
outside of a platform like this is going to be its own new user cost. But
So your price of admission is your employee seat, but then it's unlimited value
right.
inside the employee seats.
Yeah.
Wow,
Mm-hmm.
that's crazy.
Okay, so maybe it's time to start wrapping up. Where would you like to go next?
Yeah. So just the last thing I'd like to leave us on is you had mentioned Klarna earlier, and some people may know Klarna out there. I don't know exactly what they do, but I think they're a personal finance kind of company out there, fintech of some sort. What I'd like to end this with is, because we've hit so many incredible themes. We've talked about no code. We've talked about examples that we at Scratch have used Notion, in this case, Notion no code platform, to deliver tremendous value. We're seeing incredible returns directly from CEOs, C-level ownership groups of these, some PE, some non-PE companies in a variety of verticals, right? So, what I'd like to end this on is the example of Klarna, because Klarna, they took no code, and I don't know what no code platform they used, but it doesn't matter. They took a no code platform and literally they got rid of all of their anchor applications. So they kind of said, screw everything, we're going to build it ourselves. They had the time and they had the money. They didn't want to deal with anchor applications, so
Mm-hmm.
they kind of went all in on no code. But what's unique is what I read yesterday is, because they now really have the business intelligence, the process, the people, everything's aligned. They were able to very quickly see value in certain processes that could be accelerated and or replaced by AI. So they literally just announced yesterday, by implementing AI in some processes, they were able to reduce headcount by 700 people. Now, you guys, this is, let's be big boys here. We're C-level. If you don't need 700 people, yeah, that's not the greatest publicity stunt. However, it is real shareholder value, and if you don't need those people, you have to be using AI. So what I want to talk about, for just a couple of minutes, and we can, because it's going to be a future episode, is what we've realized at Scratch is, what we are doing is the building blocks, the Lego building blocks that you had mentioned, is the perfect petri dish to then, actually, it's not even a petri dish, it's the
Mm-hmm.
perfect garden to then identify and deliver AI applications that increase productivity internally, or even better yet, in some of our customers, we've built AI applications that have absolutely increased customer value or products, right? So let's talk about that just a little bit before we end this one, because I really want to set that
Yeah,
part
for
up. So
sure.
exciting.
There's kind of two places to drop in on this. Place number one is, if you spend any time listening to AI podcasts and sort of AI trends right now, you know that AI agents, the agentic future is what it's referred to, is where people believe the primary value driver is going to be for businesses using AIs, replacing kind of repetitive workflows with AI agents. Well, the precondition or the assumption in order to put an agent in to do that work is that you've aligned it and defined it, and in an ideal world, put it in a place with an API that's accessible to whatever that agentic platform is. And that's exactly what we're doing in our Notion no-code build-outs, right? Notion is a very API friendly. It's actually got its own AI tools on top of it. But a friend of mine happens to be the CEO of an AI agent company. And when I was telling him what we were doing, he said, I need businesses that have been through the no code Notion custom workspace build out, because now that is a target rich environment for me to go interlay agents into their aligned processes in databases with open APIs on them. And so for these AI agent companies to deploy their technology into a business, that business needs to kind of have its house in order inside, and getting your house in order inside is exactly what we're doing. So the connection there is really nice. I'm sure we're going to end up partnering with an AI agent business at some point, if not build it ourselves. So that's point number one.
Yeah.
Point number two is, and we actually are doing this with one of our clients, is building custom LLM AI applications and using Notion databases to provide the RAG context to that LLM. So if you're going to put an LLM application in your business or extending to the market from your business, you want that LLM to talk like you talk, to know your secret IP sauce of your business, right? Like it needs to be trained in that regard. And again, we're not going to go deep into these concepts right now, but RAG, retrieval augmented generation, is a model of LLM training. I'm putting that in air quotes because you're technically not fine-tuned training it. That's a much faster, less expensive way to get the LLM to have context of your business. The context you provide to the LLM is your business documentation, that kind of stuff. And so in the example of my current client, where we're building an AI app for them, they have a very technical product, like a lot of science terms in their product, and their customers really struggle to use the product unless you're an expert in that scientific area. And so their support team manages a glossary in Notion, and that glossary is to help the support team answer questions to the customers when they call in and say, hey, what does this scientific term mean? I can't use your product until I kind of understand that. So we have connected that Notion glossary database, which is constantly improving, right? Like as every time they have an interaction with a customer, we're getting another at bat to know what kind of terms we need to define. Well, we have a manager approval layer on that Notion database. And when one of those glossary terms gets approved by a manager, it becomes accessible to the LLM, who is providing business context and inside the products, inside customer support. So that's just a great example of, by having your house in order in a no-code environment, you make the sort of advanced, usage of LLM technology even better, specific to your business IP, your business uniqueness. So it's really, really cool.
An LM, large language model. Yep. What is that?
Large language model, foundational model, OpenAI.
Got it. Well, that I look forward to that particular episode. I probably won't. I may be on it, but I won't be adding any value. I'll be absorbing value. So I like it.
Okay, so let's wrap it up there. The upcoming episodes, as we said, are going to take two forms. So this was just the baseline foundation setting episode. We're going to, and we've already talked to a bunch of our clients who are super excited about their no-code workspace, their Notion workspace. We're going to be talking to CEOs. Their Scratch
There's
OS.
Scratch
Thank
OS.
you. This is why I'm not in marketing. We're going to be talking to chief executive, chief people, chief product, chief operating. Those kind of C-suite operators are going to come in, tell their story. We're going to look at the problem we solved together. Those are the long form interviews, and then interspersed between, like maybe on a every 2-week cycle, is going to be a shorter segment that is an actual deep dive into a best practice around. If you want to do this in Notion, we're going to do some Notion build out best practices.
Fantastic.
And I'm sure that we're going to probably get some people saying like, hey, you guys are using a wrong tool, or you need to know about this other thing. And again, I want to learn through this. And so we may bring on people and have them teach us what we could be doing better. That's a key part of this. So we welcome input from anybody that's listening that has a better way to do things. All right.
Fantastic.
Well, this was fun. Look forward to the next one. Catch you next time.